I want to welcome you all to PAVE's 134th virtual panel. Today, we are going to be talking about accessibility, or more specifically, wheelchair users' independence accessibility in autonomous vehicles. The United Spinal Association SecureRide Coalition is tackling this challenge head on, so we're going to learn more about that today from a number of industry and accessibility advocates. Our panelists today are Bill Nixon of GM. We've got Kent Kaiser of United Spinal, Michele Lee of Robotics, and Wayne Grau of NCART. You all probably know me. I'm Caitlin Magny Miller. I'm PAVE's Communications Director, and I'll be moderating today's discussion. And before we get into the Q&A, we're going to have a few short presentations from our panelists. So to get started, I'm going to turn it over to Kent.
Thanks very much, Caitlin. I'm Kent Kaiser, a policy fellow at the United Spinal Association. For accessibility purposes, I'm an old, bald white guy in a blue jacket and shirt with a navy and orange tie. United Spinal advocates for wheelchair users like me, especially for our quality of life issues from A to Z, and we have always advanced accessible transportation. We want to thank PAVE for highlighting wheelchair securement, and Allison Pascal with Volkswagen, who suggested this forum. Allison serves on PAVE's board with me and is also a SecureRide member. If we could go to the next slide, please, Caitlin. For those of you unfamiliar with wheelchair securement, this diagram from our partner's website at the University of Michigan Transportation Research Institute, UMTRI, helps explain. In this overview, a driver, whether it's on a ride share, a paratransit service, or a bus, has to secure 4 straps represented by those black lines coming from the wheelchair. 2 from the front of our wheelchair base and 2 from the back. Those 4 straps are anchored to the vehicle's floor so that in a crash, the wheelchair isn't moving or won't move. Next slide, please, Caitlin. There are at least 3 challenges with this system. First, it's so time consuming. I have to add 15 minutes to every trip I plan because it can take that long if the driver isn't well trained. It also means delays for the other passengers. And all this delay helps explain why other passengers on, say, a bus start rolling their eyes when I roll on board. And it's why the bus driver asks this leading question always, do you need to be secured? Hoping I'll say no. Well, secondly, safety concerns. Has the driver tied us down correctly? I've been on trips when I didn't realize the tie down was wrong until after we were on our way. The driver hits the brakes, but my chair and I keep moving. And third, and equally significant, because we have to depend on somebody else, this system is definitely not independent for us. Of course, some of us who own an accessible van may have an automated securement system. Usually it's a post on the bottom of the wheelchair and you roll onto the vehicle floor anchor to be secured. But that post lowers our wheelchair ground clearance, making it difficult to get over even door thresholds or curb ramps with high roadways. Plus, they're designed for the individual wheelchair, not for general use. There's nothing on the market for automated securement for general use that we could use across different modes of transportation. Only when industry got serious about autonomous vehicles did the need for and the interest in an automated wheelchair securement system ramp up. And we can do the next slide, please, Caitlin. So a couple of years ago, United Spinal got a call from General Motors. Bill Nixon, the policy integration manager at GM, explained they were working to ensure that AVs would be truly accessible for everyone. And within a matter of months, United Spinal SecureRide Coalition was born. And we thank General Motors for its continuing and strong commitment. And for Bill Nixon, who's a co-lead with SecureRide. Bill is extremely committed to both accessibility and to our community. And I'm proud to call him one of our community. Our third co-lead, lending his many talents and expertise on all things wheelchair, is Wayne Grau. Wayne is Executive Director of NCART, representing wheelchair manufacturers and suppliers. Thanks for being one of us, Wayne, in your work, your advocacy, and your spirit. So as our slide points out, We are a stakeholder-led coalition to develop a wheelchair securement system. The first feedback we get from federal officials and others, anyone we meet with, always commend us on how well represented our stakeholders are. But we still need more key players, and more on that later. And we did not want to reinvent the wheel. We've been building on existing securement standards designed for more seamless multimodal transportation. That way, wheelchair users can more quickly travel from, say, a paratransit service to a bus and then to a train and back again. An automated securement system would save me almost an hour on a round trip like that. I mean, requiring 6 different people to tie down 24 straps in 6 vehicles. So our vision is imagining a world where wheelchair users can use a single attachment feature to move independently across transportation modes to get us to where we want to go. That means from the start, we worked with a safety first premise, and we have to know that our chairs are secured correctly, and it has to be timely and it has to be efficient. And that means that the wheelchair attachment can't weigh much, increase our chair's footprint, or decrease our ground clearance. Initially, our focus was on securement in autonomous vehicles, but it soon became clear that the need was not just for the vehicles of tomorrow, we needed it for today's vehicles, like I described in that paratransit bus train trip. So we want to make certain that the anchoring devices will work and are integrated in various modes of types of vehicles across various modes of transportation, ground, rail, and air. Importantly, a single solution for multiple transportation modes will speed adoption and increase scale. The perfect vision for me is that I hail an AV on an app, it quickly pulls up wherever I am, the ramp deploys, I roll on board, back into the anchor, securing my wheelchair, and off I go. What a game changer. Safer, time saver, and makes me independent. And if we could do next slide, please. And with that, I want to turn it over to my colleague and friend, Michele Lee. Michele is a fierce advocate for our community. She's devoted a tremendous amount of her own time speeding Secure's agenda forward with her multiple talents. And we thank you for that, Michele.
Thanks, Kent. Hi, everyone. My name's Michele Lee, and I use she, her pronouns. And for a quick visual description, I am an Asian woman with shoulder length-ish long hair, dark hair, sitting in a power wheelchair that's off camera, and super excited to be here. Never been to a PAVE webinar, so always a first time for everything, and hopefully I can keep coming to more. Very much honored to be here and speaking with you about this really important topic that's like near and dear to my heart, but also for a lot of other folks. Currently, I work at Serve Robotics, and I'm a senior manager for public policy and accessibility. But previously, I was very closely working with Bill Nixon, who you'll hear from later at Cruise, and I was leading accessibility on the government affairs team there. So it's autonomous vehicles is something that people with disabilities can only dream about having sooner rather than later because transportation systems that are currently available are broken, honestly. They are not adequate and they're not sufficient, and there's not enough to meet demand, especially for folks with disabilities, and more particularly people with wheelchairs, such as myself. So I live this challenge every day. I live in the city of Chicago, and it's really hard for me to get from point A to point B, even though there's rideshare, there's a great public transit system here, there are taxis, but oftentimes and there's paratransit. Oftentimes I'm stranded. I'm like, how do I get home from a restaurant or, going to the doctors or whatever because of just lack of available transportation options. So with the advent of autonomous vehicles and like working at Cruise, it was such a game changer for so many people, like just to even dream about this reality. And wheelchair securement was a real part of how we can like get there because obviously having the infrastructure and a vehicle would be amazing, but also how do you secure the wheelchair once you're in there? So next slide, please. Sorry, I forgot about my next slide. So here's a lovely photo of one of the Cruise Origin that we were developing and working very closely with the designers and the engineers and the disability community at large. We found that there's a lot of accessibility features to be had that are that can be integrated with software, with, the apps, with like other things, and that can accommodate a lot of folks who cannot drive, those including like the blind and low vision community. But for wheelchair users in particular, securing the wheelchair, because there's many, many different kinds of wheelchairs, including a power wheelchair like the one you see in the photo I'm in, but also people have manual wheelchairs, people have scooters. There's like all types of mobility devices that I'm sure Wayne can tell you more about later. That it's a challenge to secure. And so having those four straps, it's not going to work when there's not a driver, right? And so that was a challenge we ran into when we were working on the origin at GM and Cruise. And so very excited that we have this coalition going. And a lot of you might think like, okay, wheelchair securement, that's something to think about. But like, it's really actually important because the disability community in America is quite vast and quite large. At this point, it's like 1 in 4 folks identify as having a disability in America, and that's a lot of the population. And that population, quite frankly, is getting larger as days and days go by. So if you are lucky enough to not have a disability today, you're going to experience disability at some point in your life because we're all getting older. We are all going to lose our different faculties. And so designing with accessibility in mind and with accessibility integrated into your product, you will be able to reach more folks. You'll have more customers, you'll have loyalty, all the things. But in addition to all that, next slide, please. Cruise and General Motors worked with the National Disability Institute to do a study on like what would actually happen if there were accessible autonomous vehicles that were widely available. And this study was published in December of 2022, but the numbers are still, valid because not much has changed in terms of accessible autonomous vehicles. And so taking a step back for context, people with disabilities have a significantly lower workforce participation rate compared to people without disabilities, almost double. And that's because of mainly transportation barriers, honestly. So a lot of folks cannot, if you cannot get to your job reliably because of transportation barriers, or you cannot go to the job interview, you're not getting that job, right? You're not landing it, you're not keeping it, and not everyone can have the luxury and privilege of working from home. And a lot of people with disabilities, find it very hard to get a job, and therefore, the transportation barriers really exist to stop people from working. And if we could fully have accessible autonomous vehicles that are widely adopted, the numbers are actually very staggering. The financial model that they used at the National Disability Institute indicated that like an additional 4.4 million jobs for people with disabilities and a total of 9.2 additional jobs for everyone else. It would stimulate the economy. It would increase the GDP, $867 billion. Just let that settle in for a second. 867 billion and an increase in US output of 1.6 trillion. Like these numbers are like they blew our minds when we saw them. But like honestly, just giving people the opportunity to work would be, it's not only the right thing to do, but it's economically sound for our entire country. So with that, I'll let you just, let the numbers sink in while I turn it over to our next presenter, Bill.
Thanks, Michele. Good afternoon. I'm Bill Nixon, a middle-aged white male with brown hair, wearing a blue jacket and a gray shirt. And today I'm speaking with you from my home office outside Detroit. I work in the Advanced Technology Policy Group at General Motors, but I'm here today with my colleagues to discuss the SecureRide Coalition. So let's start with who we are. The SecureRide Coalition was established to address challenges that no single company or industry alone could solve. Achieving meaningful progress requires technical innovation, policy reform, and coordinated collaboration among manufacturers, standards organizations, vehicle upfitters, transportation providers, and advocacy groups. So we use this slide to try and capture that plan. And across the top, you can see the 3 different arrows labeled stage 1, 2, and 3. And under stage 1 is a list of our core member companies, including General Motors, United Spinal, NCART, Volkswagen, and leading wheelchair manufacturers such as Permobil, Sunrise, Key Mobility, Pride Quantum, and Invacare, as well as securement specialists like EasyLock and AMF Bruns. These are the organizations that are central to delivering improved securement solutions. So we're currently in stage 2, We're expanding to include a broader range of transportation companies and advocacy groups to refine the solutions and promote supportive policies and fundings. You can see we brought in other ground transportation companies, but have also engaged bus, rail, and even airline companies as well. In our partner program, we brought in a variety of disability advocates and other transportation organizations. It is important to note that the SecureRide operates under a shared IP agreement, which ensures that the resulting standards are freely licensed to encourage innovation and adaptation across different transportation modes. Next slide, please. As the SecureRide team was settling in on how to modernize the existing UDIG standard, the DOT established 2 small business innovation research grants to develop the UDIG. These first 2 grants were to design and build a concept for this automated securement system. And I should note here that the UDIG system has been on the books. So it's been a voluntary standard for well over 20 years, but never commercialized. And we really dug into that, and we'll show you a little bit why that is the case. So once these SBIRs were awarded, SecureRide reached out, and we had already been in operation or been working on this for about close to 2 years at that point, and reached out to both these companies to develop their proposals and concepts. And based on those concept designs with SecureRide support, both companies went and applied for a phase 2 grant, which were accepted to move them forward. And you can see the phase 2 grant is significant. It's a $1 million award over a 2-year period to take this design concept and commercialize it. One of the things we did and made part of their phase 1 report was the need to modernize the UDIG standards that's out there, and we'll show you a little bit more about that. In this first picture, we show the wheelchair attachment and the vehicle anchor before they connect, and you can see it's a fairly large bracket that sits on the back of this manual wheelchair, and then the anchoring device is mounted to the vehicle. The middle picture shows the chair firmly secured in the anchor, and the last picture shows a close-up of the securement point. One of the things I'll mention is the way the chair is anchored in the vehicle is not part of the standard. So that's really where the innovation takes place, to make sure that the anchoring mechanism that's in the vehicle is suitable for the environment and the needs and the use of that particular transportation mode, whether it's a ground transportation or rail or airline. I should note that the UDIG system has been demonstrated to meet all the performance standards currently required for ground transportation, like the floor strap system. Next slide, please. It's important to note that SecureRide solution is not exactly the UDIG that's currently in the standards. While the foundation is the same, we've introduced significant improvements in compatibility, weight, performance, integration, and this could only have been done with a range of the committed stakeholders involved in stage 1. If you just move across the 3 images on the slide, the first image shows the UDIG standard, which is bulky and often adds 4 to 6 pounds to the chair, which is a huge increase for some of today's lightweight manual chairs that clock in at less than 25 pounds. In the middle image, we show the size and weight reduction achievable using our new attachment location and scheme, while the last image shows the more complete integration we're pursuing to integrate the UDIG anchoring system with the existing transit loop used for the 4-point. So you can see we're going from, and this is, if you look at this current UDIG system, this is what never made it out of the standard and into commercialization. Again, to add something that's 4 to 6 pounds to a manual wheelchair user's daily transportation is just an unacceptable alternative. And so what we've done is working with the wheelchair OEMs, found out the better solutions, a better way to integrate that connection method with today's wheelchairs. Next slide, please. So as Kent mentioned, this initial discussion was about independent securement for autonomous vehicles, but we quickly recognized that we were going to have to work across multiple transportation modes. But while we looked to apply this to these other transportation modes to develop the scale and the momentum to really change the narrative, I want to point out a few of the things that are critical for AVs. So first, we want to make sure that the independent wheelchair securement and occupant restraint is something that we can unlock for wheelchair users. We want to make sure it accommodates a wide range of existing power and manual chairs to serve the greatest population. We want to make sure we enable convertible seating positions in the vehicles. So a vehicle that could normally accommodate a seated passenger would also be able to quickly be converted to a wheelchair position. We also want to make sure we maintain a clear floor for maximum maneuverability in tight spaces. And we want to minimize the variation in the occupant position to make sure we get proper shoulder harness placement. So these are the things we're working for. We've got a pretty good line on each one of them. Those all would apply directly to development of autonomous wheelchair accessible vehicles. So I appreciate your time. I'd like to pass it over to Wayne to describe some of the policy and advocacy initiatives we've got.
Great. Thank you, Bill. My name is Wayne Grau. I'm the Executive Director for the National Coalition of Assistive and Rehab Technology, or NCART for short. I'm a white male wearing glasses. I've got a blue sweater on. I have a beautiful fake picture of the Golden Gate Bridge. I'm actually on the East Coast, so that's where I'm calling from. So I think one of the things we've got to recognize is that when we're talking about the advocacy that's going to be needed, it's very broad. We're not just dealing with one. A lot of times, if you put a bill out there, you go to the federal government and you find a congressperson to go ahead and introduce it and so forth, and that's what you focus on. This one encompasses a lot of different areas. We've got to deal with the federal government, state governments, city and local. I mean, if you look at some of the AV things, if you're in New York City, you're dealing with New York City, you're dealing with New York State, and you're also dealing with the federal government. So, and on top of that, we're dealing with various federal and state agency and their regulatory requirements. Okay, just on the federal level, you're talking about the Department of Transportation. Well, let's go back to New York again. New York has a Department of Transportation. Suffolk County, where I grew up, also has a transportation or transportation regulations. So we just need to remember that it's a very encompassing, and we're going to need to focus on a couple of things first. Now, on top of that, throw in the fact that we want to go ahead and get this across different modes of transportation, whether it's trains, planes, and so forth. So the advocacy challenge is out there, but we're up for that when we're ready to go for that fight. Some of the policy challenges we've got to deal with is the people that control it is how do we get this funded as well? And a lot of that is directed from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. It's called CMS. And their real focus is on Medicare patients. And unfortunately, they have something called the in for use in the home rule, which basically says that they will cover a wheelchair for a person inside their home. As long as they can't get around there, they will cover that chair. But if that person needs to go outside, that's not covered. Okay, so if a person needs to just use it outdoors, they get around inside, then Medicare would not cover that. Now, Medicare, please remember, is different than Medicaid, and that Medicare was really more designed for individuals, more seniors and so forth. There are exceptions to the rule, okay? But we really believe that when this in the home rule came out, it was misinterpreted by the agency. So we've been battling that. Ken and I have been involved with that a number of years, battling that going on. But it does create challenges for the transit option, because again, you want to have that ability to have that chair there, but you want to be able to get it paid for. It's got to be covered first and then paid for. Now, Medicaid, which is really more designed, I would say, for younger folks, as far as some economic, socioeconomic issues and so forth, Medicaid is really based on community use. So it could be used both in the home and in the community, which offers so many more opportunities for individuals to get out and lead the life they want to lead, whether it's work, school, family time, and all those things. But again, as Michele said, it's always been that securement. How do we get the chairs secured? And that's how this whole thing was born out. So next question. I'm sorry. Next slide, please. So Medicaid programs, many of them cover the transit option. the four-point tie-down system, okay, or transit loops. I will tell you that transit options are typically ordered when the chair is prescribed by a therapist. They order it, they have to justify it, okay, to prove to the insurance company, but even the Medicaid program of why it's needed, and then it's attached to the wheelchair, okay? Now, I will tell you, there's a voluntary industry standard. It's called WC19. And in order for the Medicaid programs to cover it, it needs to meet that WC19 standard. Okay. Now, again, this has to be justified. You can't just ask for it. The therapist has to go ahead and put that in there. And it could be as simple as, let's say it's a child that's looking to go to school, needs to be transported to school. But it's important that that therapist writes that up. Next slide. So, what are the most pressing advocacy issues? Okay. We really want to look to develop an exception for the in-the-home rule. Just as a reminder, the in-the-home rule basically states we will pay for a wheelchair inside the person's home, but if they go out, it's not going to be a covered item. And that's why it has to be, we really need an exception for this one, because it would leave out a number of individuals, a lot of them older Americans who are utilizing wheelchairs. Okay. We need to start with one spot. Okay. So where do we start? Like I said, the advocacy universe is very large. All right. So we need to come together as a group and make that decision. Do we want to start in a particular state? Do we want to start, with a particular department or regulation? So that's going to be one of the big keys there as well. And then the bigger question is, we got to work together. Who can help get this done? Okay. We need to harness the power of focus, but also a large group of advocates. All right. You're seeing a cross section of individuals who come together just on this webinar, okay, that represent many different interests. But if we can work together, okay, we can go ahead and achieve this. And it's about time. We need to get securement done for individuals who are utilizing wheelchairs so they can live their best life, whether it's with an autonomous vehicle, a plane, a train, whatever they want. And it offers so many opportunities for us to work together. So at this point, Ken, I don't know if I turn this back to you or not. I'm not sure.
Well, it's Caitlin. Do you have some questions for us, or?
Yeah, well, thank you all. First of all, what an interesting, diverse set of perspectives and areas of expertise that you bring. So really interesting to hear more about this issue and how you're tackling it. We don't have a ton of time left for questions, but I do want to ask you, Kent, how can companies and organizations who might be listening in today get involved in this?
Well, we have two types. We have members who primarily have a direct role in physically developing and deploying securement systems. And then we have partners who have a stake in helping us make certain that securement system works best for our community, but moreover, advocates for the system across transportation modes with policymakers to be certain that the system can roll out on as many vehicles as possible across as many transportation modes as possible.
Absolutely. Bill, I'm going to turn to you. What other development work is still needed for these autonomous wheelchair accessible vehicles to be done?
Thanks. Yeah, while independent wheelchair securement is really the primary challenge, there are different additional improvements for like ramp integration, in-vehicle maneuverability, layout, vehicle interface control, and occupant restraints. As we look ahead, there's some promising initiatives on the horizon. So for instance, the Society of Automotive Engineers is launching a 3-year university competition starting next year that focuses on converting the interior of some purpose-built AV chassis into wheelchair accessible vehicles. What's great about this program not only encourages the innovation solutions from emerging engineers, but also develops engineering talent that thinks inclusively to develop solutions that address broad-based issues for the entire community. Those would be our kind of our key focus spots beyond the securement itself.
Great. And then before we wrap up, kind of bigger picture here, Michele, can you talk sort of at a high level about both the societal and the business benefits of developing these accessible transportation modes?
Sure. So this is Michele speaking. As I talked about earlier, just the economic benefits are enormous, but societally, like we all people with disabilities. I mean, if you think about it, if you're not a person with a disability, you know somebody with a disability, and you want them to be able to traverse the transportation ecosystem just like anyone else. An able-bodied person can just pull out their phone, call an Uber or a similar rideshare, get a ride in 1 minute or less, right? Oftentimes. But that's not the case for people with disabilities, right? That's not the case for a lot of folks who are wanting just to go out and live their lives and just be independent and just fly, use an AV, use a train, use a bus, all just to go places and not even just stimulate the economy, but to see the people they love, to be in their community. But I think the benefits are huge. This is a real issue that's like holding back developments of wheelchair accessibility in the autonomous vehicle space. So the coalition is really important, and I would encourage everyone on this call. If you're not a member or partner already, please join, but also tell your coworkers, right? Tell your friend, tell everybody, because we definitely need, it's an all-in kind of situation to advocate to get to the solution. And just encourage that there is more accessibility throughout all the designs of all AVs. So I think that's important too.
Absolutely. Well, unfortunately, we are a little bit over time, so we're going to have to wrap up now. I will say, if anybody on the call today has questions for any of our panelists, feel free to reach out to me or, the PAVE inbox, and I'm happy to connect you with our panelists. So thank you all for joining, and thanks to our wonderful panelists for their expertise. We will be posting the full recording of this on YouTube later today. But thanks again for joining us.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.